What's up, everybody? Are we actually live right now? Good to have everybody out. I didn't talk too much about cooking with Frag over the past week when I took a break, but I'll briefly go over what we're gonna do. I'm basically rebooting the entire thing. I'm really enjoying doing the cooking section. It just wasn't as organized as I would have liked before. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of starting over. I'm just pretend the previous episodes didn't happen. I'm not gonna redo all the previous episodes. What I have now, that link I just posted, the Cooking with Frag info, I have 2 months in advance of ingredients and what will be touched on in the Cooking with Frag episode. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a 2-month segment of Cooking with Frag, and I'm gonna try to tie things in, like some of the cuts that we use here in the knife skills video. We're going to repeat later on. And cats. We're gonna repeat later on. And then, like we're gonna do a section on stocks on I think week 6 it is, and then we're gonna take that stock the next week and make French onion soup. So I'm gonna try to make it 2-month sections, and then after the 2 months, I'm gonna take a 2-week break to do it again. So thank you all for being here. It's gonna be a nice simple one. We're gonna make this little potato hash, which is basically the basics of cooking. To get started. Everybody should own at least one good knife. If you don't own a good knife, this is like the one investment I think everybody should make. You can get a good knife for anywhere from $60 to $80. Let's talk about setting up your station real quick. If you have your cutting board just on the counter, it slides around really easy, and this is very unsafe working conditions. So before you do anything cutting-wise, the safest thing to do is take a towel, get it slightly damp, and put it below your cutting board. This will stop the cutting board from sliding at all. Doesn't have to be very wet, just enough to stick to the counter. It doesn't even have to be a big rag. You can use like a little washcloth or something. As long as there's something below the cutting board, it will stop it from sliding. And that way you won't slip and cut yourself. Let's talk about knife handling real quick. A big mistake a lot of cooks I've seen make is they grab the knife like this. The problem with this is you have no real control. When you're trying to cut, your knife's going to wobble back and forth. The correct way to hold a knife is put your thumb on the edge. On the other side, you clamp down. You want the knife to be an extension of your hand, so whichever way you move your wrist, it is solid and will never move. This way you can make cuts with precision and not have to worry about the knife sliding back and forth. That's how you get even cuts. This may seem like simple stuff to a lot of people, but if you're walking around a kitchen, you should always have your knife at your side with the blade pointed in towards your leg. Also, I've seen a really nasty cut, so I'll point this out. If you ever hand a knife to somebody, seems obvious, make sure the blade is pointing out. I watched somebody hand a knife like this once. They pulled the knife out of their hand, and it was pretty ugly. So the more control you have over the knife, everybody has a different grip on the knife. Some people grip it up like this. Some people pinch it. The big point is you want to have complete control. It should be an extension of your hand. So we're going to be going over a couple cuts today. We're going to be going over how to cut a tomato, which is a struggle for a lot of people. Peppers. We'll do a couple different cuts on a potato. We'll do a chiffonade of basil. We're going to do some roll cut carrots. And then basically we're just going to fry it up in a pan and have a nice potato hash, which is something I really enjoy. Yes, the tomato cut's really a struggle for a lot of people. I mean, the main thing for cutting a tomato is to have a sharp knife. But I mean, even if you don't have a sharp knife, I'll show you a couple tricks. If your knife's a little bit more dull, you can still effectively cut a tomato. Because usually what happens when you cut a tomato with a dull knife, it just smashes and oozes out. But there are tricks to get past that. Of course, I washed all my vegetables earlier today, so I don't need to wash them now. Well, first things first, let's peel these carrots. I'm really excited to get back into Cooking with Frag with a clear plan. Honestly, not having a plan to do it and just kind of doing whatever was kind of stressful, so we will be a lot more focused and ready this time. I'm not sure if I'm going to upload to YouTube or not. I think I am, but the Twitch uploaders had problems with YouTube as of late. So at the very least, I will have a section posted on my website with links to all the videos of the day where these happened. Okay, we'll do tomatoes last because they're probably the messiest of them. Let's talk about just cutting stuff into cubes, which is what we want. I mean, you have something, every food has a different shape, so how do you achieve a nice cube or a strip or something like that? The trick is to make, you want to make a square. So we're going to do this one all perfect like, and then we'll do the rest kind of like most people would do at home. The first thing you want to do when you're making squares is or making cubes is you have to make a square out of it. Let's find one that's actually a little bit better than that. I guess that'll do. Anytime you cut something, this goes for tomatoes, onions, whatever, the first thing you want to do is get a flat surface. This will keep anything from rolling around. If you try to cut like this and try to cut on the side, you're just going to have a wobbly potato. So cutting a little bit off is the best way to go. This may seem pretty wasteful, but if you're in a professional kitchen, this is how it's done. How you get the nice straight cut that you want, you take your hand and you make a claw like this. The edge of your knuckles is the guideline for your knife. You press your knife up pretty hard against there, and then you make an even cut down. It serves two purposes. Having your hand in a claw like this ensures that you'll never cut your fingertips unless you stick your thumb out too far, which I've done before. One ensures that you'll never cut your fingertips, and two ensures that you have a nice even surface to keep your knife straight. So you put your fingers on, and you line up your knuckle. We're going to cut right about there. Push down with the tip of the knife. Finish your cut, and we have a nice flat surface. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And now we have something resembling a square. I'll end up using these for diced potatoes anyways, but if you need perfect, this is the way to do it. Okay, so we have a nice cube. It's not a perfect cube, but it's a nice cube. Okay, so if you're going to cut, grab a damp towel. Anytime you cut potatoes, you want to have like a wet washcloth, paper towel, something. That starchy stuff on the potato will make your knife very sticky, and then it makes it very hard to cut through the potatoes. So every couple cuts, you just want to wipe off the starch from your knife, and that'll give you cleaner cuts. Second step after you get a cube of whatever it is you're cutting is to cut it into flat pieces. And this is how you cut stuff into cubes. And you stack them up, and then you cut them into strips. And I'll show this. The easiest way to pull your knife out is you take your finger and you put it on the other side, and then you pull your knife out from there. If you're working with stuff, sticky stuff especially, what will happen is when you pull your knife up, the middle section will pull out with your knife. It's not a rectangle. Yeah, okay. It's not really a square. It's a rectangle. The real trick here is you have to, it takes a little bit of practice, but you have to judge when you're cutting the thickness, when you're going to cut it this way, what actually a cube is. If you're making like a julienne, which is a very thin 1-inch strip, so about this and a lot thinner, you just adjust how thick or thin you're going to cut this way, and then this way. And you can see we have nice cubes of potato. I mean, that's the basics of knife skills, is cutting it into a square, and then cutting it into strips, and then you cut it into cubes. It takes a bit of practice, but I mean, if you want to take your time, it won't be bad at all. And then these we're just going to chop up into not really cubes, which is what I would do if I was just cooking for myself, which I am. Another thing to note is you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. So if you have a whole bunch of strips like this, it's another easy way to cut yourself. You're much better off separating this, rather than trying to bunch all this up and cut it at once, break it into 2 sections and cut like this. This will always give you more control than trying to do too much. The idea is to keep that claw the entire time, so your hand can only hold so much on the claw. So if it's spread out like this, your hand is not stable. So a couple different ways to cut things with your knife. The worst thing for your knife is doing this on the cutting board, which I do with mushrooms sometimes because I think it's fun, but it is one of the quickest ways to dull your knife. The safest way to do your knife is put the tip down and then roll the knife into it. Yes, I will go over how I move the claw on the vegetable. Yes. I can't do it right now, but I will do it on the next thing that we cut. That's definitely a good point. Alright, that's definitely going to be enough potatoes for me. Let's cut the pepper and we'll go over that. Alright, peppers. How I like to clean my peppers, you have a couple options. You can either put your hand down like this and put the knife in and then roll it around. I find that to be kind of dangerous, although it is the most effective way as far as yield goes. I cut mine in half and take your trash can or whatever, and then you take your thumb, put it right on the edge of the green, and then you can pull out the center. Now you can see we didn't really lose. You can see how much flesh we lost. It's almost nothing. Pull out the pith. Little tap, get the rest of the seeds. I don't mind the pith so much, this white stuff. Some people don't like the way it tastes. It kind of depends on where you live and where you grew up. I mean, some people leave all the pith in there. It's not going to hurt you. Alright, so same thing, stick your thumb right up to the edge of the green, and then just pop out the core. We lost a little more that time. Alright, so anytime you have something with a skin on it, like a tomato or a pepper, where you run into trouble is getting past the skin. So if you're going to cut a pepper, you don't really want to cut from this side unless you have an exceptionally sharp knife. And it will dull out your knife quicker if you're cutting into the skin. Cutting tomatoes and stuff dulls out your knife a lot quicker than cutting, let's say, a carrot. Okay. So we're going to do the same concept. We're going to cut this into strips. Still maintaining the claw, we're just trying to roll it over, and then I'll demonstrate how we move the claw when we cut. This is another example where you don't want to bite off too much. I'm not going to cut all these at once. One, because it's uneven, and two, because it's unsafe. If I try to do this, my hand is just not big enough. Okay. So you basically think of your hand like a little spider, is the way that I describe it. You're grabbing onto it, and then you're inching back. You're just basically doing this. You inch back a little bit, and then you hold stable, and then you inch back a little bit, and then you hold stable again. There's also another method to do, which I'll explain. I like the spider method for most things. If you're going fast, that's what you use. But the other way to do it is you just make your claw, you hold it stable, and you go back like this. You just hop your hand back. Just hop your hand back, and then reclamp what you're doing. Go back, reclamp what you're doing. The claw is the #1 thing that will save you from cutting yourself. Is the #1 thing to save you from cutting yourself, and it's something that a lot of people don't do. I mean, even a lot of professional cooks don't do it. But if you do that, your odds of cutting yourself are next to nothing because you have a protective barrier between your knife and the rest of your hand. Alright, that's definitely going to be enough peppers for me. Maybe let's cut up another potato. I'll make 2 worth. Okay. You also take into account the shape of something that you're cutting. Like this is a really weird shaped potato. It's really flat on one end, really lumpy on the other, but it's skinny as well. So what I'm going to do is cut off a flat surface once again. That way we won't have any rolling. and then we'll just make big strips. Oh, see, there we go. See, there's an example where I cut off more than I can chew, and then you end up with pieces like this versus pieces like this. The less you cut at a time, the more precise it's going to be. Another thing you want to avoid when you're cutting is dragging your knife on the cutting board. And I am guilty of this sometimes, but you never want to hear this noise. That is like nails on a chalkboard to somebody with a good knife. That, or doing things like scraping your knife on the edge of a bowl. It's another very quick way to destroy your knife. Anything you can avoid to having bad contact with the blade of the knife, the better off you are. Alright, since we got that done, we'll cut this pepper, and then I'm going to talk about steeling a little bit, which is the most important part for keeping your knife sharp. Break it into two. The knife isn't impeccably sharp anymore. There's more than one person in the house that uses it than me. Sadly, not everybody takes as good care of my knife as I do, but that's okay. You can always get your knife professionally sharpened, or you can learn how to sharpen it yourself on a whetstone. Okay, the steel. This is a very cheap piece of equipment which will save you a lot of money on knives. There is a couple different kinds of knives, or steels. There's ceramic steels, and then there's these groove steels. I've always used the groove steels. You have to replace them a little bit quicker, but they always get the job done. The idea is to have a 20-degree angle when you're steeling your knife. The purpose of steeling your knife is to remove all the micro abrasions on your knife. Each time you make a hard cut on your cutting board or you chop into something, it makes a tiny fracture in the metal on the edge of your blade. The purpose of the steel is to remove those micro fractures and keep your edge sharp. If you let the micro fractures go, they turn into bigger and bigger fractures, and that's when you get an extremely dull knife. Okay. Most steels are set up so the head of the steel is actually a very good guide for how to steel your knife. What you do is you put the edge of the knife, let me show you this right, edge of the knife here, and then you tilt it down. This is the exact angle that you want to steel your knife at. It works the same on the other side, so if you're new at it, you can use that as a judge. If you're new to steeling, putting it down flat on your cutting board like this is the best way to go. And then once you're comfortable with the angle, you can do this. You'll know when you can't see the grooves anymore in Cryptio. That's the big thing. When you can't see the grooves anymore, when you see the grooves starting to wear out on the groove steel, it's time to replace. But even just feeling the edge, you can already tell it's much sharper than it was. Not incredibly sharp, but sharper than it was. Okay, carrots. I'm just going to demonstrate something called a roll cut. I wish I remembered the fancy French name for it. I don't. Interesting way to cut things. I mean, most stuff we cut on a flat surface, but if you put the carrot flat and you tilt your knife like this at a 45-degree angle, you can achieve some pretty good cuts. So what we're going to do is cut down, then roll the carrot 180 degrees, cut down again, roll it 180 degrees, again. And then you get these cool little triangles, and then you look fancy. Well, actually, a true roll cut. Let me see if I can do a perfect one real quick. It is not supposed to be an actual triangle. It's supposed to have a little a little flat on there, but that doesn't always happen. And then, of course, if you want smaller pieces, like the end of the carrot's way bigger, you can just cut it in half, and then you have little triangles. All right, there's that. All right, tomatoes. Everybody's favorite thing to cut. The reason that tomatoes are hard to cut, especially when they're ripe, is they're so juicy, and they have a very thick skin on the outside, which is hard to get through. If you have a dull knife, it's a nightmare. Usually the first thing I do is remove the core. You don't really want to do this with a big knife, but it's the same concept if you do it with a paring knife or a big knife. You put your thumb on the edge of the knife exactly how deep you want it to go in the tomato. Put the tomato on its side, and then you use your thumb as a guide. You can't cut yourself doing this unless you slip on the tomato. You notice I'm rotating the tomato, not rotating my hand. You just rotate it like this, and that way you're always safe. And you can see we cut exactly as much where our thumb was. Now, to dice a tomato, a couple options. You can do it like an onion, but you need a very sharp knife to do that. If you got a, you cut it in half and then cut it this way and cut it this way. That's extremely hard on your knife. The way that I like to do it is just cut it into strips. So we're going to put it down on the flat edge. A trick if you don't have as sharp of a knife, and I'll try to demonstrate this on the camera here. So you take the butt end of the knife, this little sharp corner, and you get your cut started there. As soon as you get a cut started in the tomato, it becomes much easier to slice through. If you have an extremely sharp knife, you just slice right through it. If you don't have the sharpest knife, you can make a cut like this, and then it'll make it slide through a lot easier. And now, when you're cutting something that's very mushy like this, we're not pressing down into it. We're actually sliding the knife through and back. Just sliding through and back. We're actually putting very little pressure on the tomato itself. As soon as you apply downward pressure, that's when you get all the juice flowing out and the seeds exploding everywhere. Same concept as doing a potato. We're going to stack them up and then cube them. Once you get them to this point, they're much easier to cut. Because you're not dealing with this really hard exterior of the tomato. So now we can dice them like so. Alright. And we have diced tomatoes. If you're going to cut the butt ends, same thing with a pepper. Don't cut from this side, flip it over and start from this side, and you're going to have a lot easier time cutting it. And the last thing we're going to do is chiffonade basil. Then we're just going to cook a quick potato hash, and that'll be the end of this section. Once again, we're going to revisit these cuts and things on a later Cooking with Frag. The idea of setting up the 2 months in advance is to kind of rally concepts and things that we're going to do. So we're starting basic, and then we'll go a little more complex later into the 2 months. Actually, we'll go a lot more complex. So we'll build the foundation, and I'm going to try to do that for each of the 2 month segments. We'll take a 2-week break in between, and then we'll build a foundation and grow from there. I have a hard time eating tomatoes because I eat them while I cut. Well, that'll definitely do it. Oh, sweet nectar, that coffee. Alright, chiffonade basil. Some nice fresh basil here. Very easy to chiffonade. It's just a very precise thing. You'll actually use your claw very effectively doing this, or precisely, I should say. All you do for basil, it's very similar to like rolling a cigar. You take the leaves and stack them on top of each other. You usually try to go biggest on the bottom, smallest on the top. There is a schedule. If somebody would post the Cooking with Frag info, that'd be great. Now you roll it up as tight as you possibly can. Then we're going to hold it in place with our claw. The best chiffonade is as thin as you can possibly get it. See, this one I'm doing the spider. I'm slowly just inching my fingers back and back and back. This is a very precise movement. I'm going to use this for bruschetta and a later cooking with frag, which is one of my favorite appetizer things to eat. Alright, so we slipped up towards the end. Well, it's a fine chiffonade. This is more what you want. Super, super, super thin. Alright, so now we have all our ingredients to make a quick potato hash, so we're going to do that now. This is really one of the most basic things you can cook. All I have here is salt and pepper, oil, and then we're going to add tomatoes and basil at the end. How do you stop fresh herbs from turning to mush when you dice so finely? Sharp knife is the key. Basil will go black very fast after you do that. I mean, a couple hours on the counter, it's going to be browning. One trick you can do if... well, let's pull a piece of basil off. One trick you can do if you need it to not brown as quick, rather than roll it... I'll just put it back on the cutting board. Rather than roll it long ways, which is the easy way to cut it, you can roll it the stem way. If you roll it up this way and cut it, the grains going this way are longer, so it'll brown less quickly. Don't smoke, but it's the same concept, so. Alright. Thank you very much, Thursday. I appreciate that. Thank you, everybody, for being here. The purpose of this is mostly demonstration. I'm not going to talk to the chat too much, but I game every week after cooking with Frag. I try to keep these sections to about an hour. That's the goal. Some of them will be slightly over or under, but trying to keep it within an hour time segment. That way it's nice and quick for everybody. I think I can get everything I want to done. The one exception to that might be the French onion soup, because caramelizing onions takes a long time. Sometimes Benacore, but you have to be careful. The only thing you have to be careful if you're heating up a pan without oil, it's not going to hurt anything when you add the oil. If you leave it on full blast and then you add oil into it, you're going to have bad time, because it'll either smoke right away or burst into flames. So you can heat your pan before you add oil, just not too hot. Every single highlight I do is saved on Twitch TV. You can find them right here. I'm not sure if I'm going to upload this to YouTube, but at the very least, we will have on this link right here, the Cooking with Frag info, we'll have a list of the videos of the day. So there will always be saved somewhere in some sort of format. My whole idea of rebooting Cooking with Frag was to get more organized, so there will definitely be a listing of videos somewhere. If you have an oil fire, what's the best way to deal with it? Great question. How do you deal with fire? I'll tell you the most effective way to deal with fire is to suffocate it. You can use baking soda, you can use salt, you can even use flour, but the most effective way to put out a fire is if you have another pan laying by, is to do this. Let's say my pan's on fire. No more fire. That's it. Never water. Never put water on a fire. It'll just make it explode, especially an oil fire. That is the most effective way to put out a fire. After that, you throw baking soda, all that stuff. Flour is not highly combustible. It'll make a mess, is the problem. If you pull it off the stove. The best thing you can do when a fire starts is not panic. That everybody panics when a fire. They go, "Oh my God, my pan's on fire." Calmly pull it off. Put a lid over it, take it outside so you don't set off your smoke alarm. Or you're probably going to set off your smoke alarm anyways, but fire needs oxygen to burn, so if you remove the oxygen source, which is all the air around us, by covering it up, it will instantly put out the fire. I'm going to cook a potato hash right now. That's what I wanted to eat. Alright, I'm going to put a little... We're definitely hot enough. Alright. We're going to add our potatoes first. That sizzle. I can say anybody can cook this. Anybody can cook this. You have to start with a nice hot pan. I'll be telling you guys to use a nice hot pan over and over and over again. Because the reason you want to use a hot pan, a couple of reasons: you get nice browning on your food, which equals flavor. The second reason you want a hot pan is it will stop things from sticking. If you add potatoes to a cold pan and you start heating them up, they will mush out on the outside and then adhere to the pan. That's the last thing you want when you're cooking anything with potatoes, is them sticking to the pan. One, it's going to burn the potatoes that stick to the pan, and two, it stops everything from evenly cooking there. Alright, all I have here is just salt and black pepper. I'm a very simple seasoning guy. I know some pretty aggressive stuff with spices and whatnot, but really, for home-cooked meals, salt and pepper is where it's at for me. You will not find many applications of cooking where you start with a cold pan. Maybe for heating up something gently like a soup or something like that, you want to start with a cold pan. But anything that has to do with cooking something that's uncooked, you want a really hot pan. Your favorite genre of food? I am classically French trained, but I do not have a favorite. I just enjoy cooking in general. I'll try anything. Yeah, this is going to be a really simple, this would be like if I opened my fridge and I was like, well, what do I have to cook? And I was like, well, I got some potatoes too. I got some basil. Let's make it happen. All I really want here is the browning to start on the edge of the potatoes, which we're not even close, so it's going to take a minute. Get nice and hot. Certainly, I mean, using your leftovers, the heat is at like a high medium, more towards the high side. You can see I'll show you if you guys can see the burner. That's all the way up, and we're like right there. That's all the way down. Oh. Almost full blast. Most things I'll cook at a medium high. As I said, there's not too many things that take low. The only thing you need to watch out when you're cooking on high heat is your oil smoking. If your oil's smoking, that's bad. Brown on your food is good. Black on your food is bad. Every food has a different cooking temperature. Though, as a general rule, by getting color on something, you're not going to burn it. You're actually going to make it taste better. Also, patience is a big thing in cooking, especially when you're cooking a simple thing like a hash or whatnot. The execution of it becomes even more important. If we flip these potatoes before they start browning on one side, we're going to have a bad time because they're not going to taste as good. what we're looking for, that's perfect. Also, don't stick your hand into really hot pans unless you're really confident you're not going to burn yourself. You can see the barely starting to brown on the edge there. Just barely. We want about 3 times that much browning before we flip them. About the same temperature as mushrooms, yeah. We'll go over flipping techniques. I can briefly cover it here. The idea of sautéing is not... The mistake people make is they try to push the food out, and you don't want to push the food. What you want to do is tilt the pan down. Well, let me make sure we're ready to flip here. We close? We're close? No. What you're doing is you're tilting the pan down, pushing forward a little bit, and bringing the pan back level. The mistake people make is they keep the pan level and they try to push forward, and what that does is it pushes the food out of the pan. If you go like this and then you just push down and bring it back level, what happens is the food flips back up. Think too many home chefs play with their food too much when cooking? Yes, it's very easy to play with your food. I do the same thing sometimes, but you have to be patient if you want well-cooked food. All right, we're just going to say these are good. We got nice browning. Okay, so once again, you tilt the pan down, push forward, and then bring it back level. Thank you, Nerd Biscuit. When I first started working in kitchens, I was terrified of doing that. We learned very quickly how to do it. Okay, so this is the color I'm talking about. That nice roasted potato brown. This is where your flavor comes from. Potatoes are bland as hell, so if you don't take the time to brown the outside, you're gonna have bad time. Also, salt and potato are very good friends, but you can't oversalt your potatoes. You're better off waiting to season a little bit on your potatoes, because the reason you're better off waiting is you can't really taste a raw potato and say, oh, it needs salt. So the best thing you can do is wait a little bit. Wait till the end and then season, and try not to over-season it. Do you think you should say, if you live with the kids, not to have the... Absolutely. I mean, I have no... my daughter's away for the weekend, so I don't have any fear of that. But definitely, if you're it depends on your kid, I guess. But you definitely don't want to have like a pan sitting like this on the edge of the counter. That's just dangerous. If you're cooking and your countertops are low, always put your handle out like this, because that's a quick way to get burned. That's actually a very good point. Okay, so one thing you can do to deter sticking in the pan is you just give it a little jiggle. You're not trying to flip it, but just making sure that it's moving around on the pan. That will, in many ways, stop it from getting stuck. Real men eat entire meals of raw potatoes. Fact. What to do if you get a burn? Good question. The best thing you can do when you get a burn is run cold water over it. There's a couple different types of oil burns. If your oil is about 300 to 350 degrees, it ain't so bad. You can dab it off, put it on cold water. The worst type of burn for me is hot oil. If you get hot oil on your skin, your first reaction is going to be go like this. If you do that, you're going to end up with a really long burn on your skin, because the oil still stays the same temperature. Yeah, with sugar burn, I don't think a home cook's going to deal with that. I recommend global knives. Japanese ice-tempered steel. By far my favorite brand. Okay, now we got nice Nice brown potatoes. I'm going to save these carrots for later. I don't really feel like carrots today. Okay, I'm going to go peppers. By the time this is done, the potatoes should be done as well. How do you spin the food in the skillet? Actually, that's a good question. I'll show you guys. It's really as simple as grabbing it with both hands, or you can do it with one hand, and you make a circle like this. Well, one thing you can do as well is you're kind of tilting it. You think of have you seen the tilt-a-whirl rides at the carnival? The ones where you sit in and then they spin around like this, and then they go like this as well. That's basically the concept. So, you know, you just all you're doing is spinning it around. Tilt-a-hurl, there you go. That's basically the concept. You're not tilting it a lot back and forth, but as much oil as you want to make it not stick. I mean, frankly, I like the taste of oil. I don't use a ton. We probably used a tablespoon or so. Okay, now that our potatoes are probably somewhat cooked, we're going to pull one off and taste it to see how the salt level is. Hello, Ravenar. Definitely need some more salt. The best thing you can do, especially if you're a new cook, is constantly taste your food. Like as soon as the potato you think it's cooked enough, taste it, salt it, taste it again. Yeah, duck fat would elevate the hell out of this. That's for sure. Alright, just a little bit more salt, and then we're like right there. And we'll just wait for the potatoes to finish cooking, then we'll finish them off. Cutting boards, it's really just about keeping them clean. I mean, this cutting board's not the best. You can already see there's knife striations in it. I think wood cutting boards, if you have one nice wood cutting board, it's great. That is correct, Bredson. I drink my coffee with a splash of duck fat, because it makes everything better. Correct. All right. I mean, that is as simple as it gets. And then all I'm going to do after that, how about a plate? No, I'm not going to add the carrots. If I was going to add the carrots, I would have added them at a similar time as the potatoes. And this is my breakfast at almost 11 p.m. Potatoes and tomatoes might seem like kind of a weird combo, but it's not. Everybody likes potatoes and ketchup, right? Put the basil on top. There you go. That's what it looks like when I cook for myself at home. No, that's not restaurant style plating, but hey, ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Onions would have been a good addition as well. In fact, I believe I was supposed to add onions, and I didn't. That's okay. If you're going to add onions to that, you would add them around the same time as the peppers. Onions take very little time to cook. Garlic's fine as well. You can add whatever you want to it. I like to keep, especially the first meal I eat for the day, nice and simple. dollop of sour cream, garlic, onions. You can add all sorts of stuff in there. This is a very base meal. Fennel and cherry tomatoes, sure. Yeah. Okay. So that was number 1, season 1, episode 1 of Cooking with Frag. I hope you all enjoyed it. I'm going to run downstairs. I'm going to start up my cast. Be playing some FTL tonight. I'm gonna come back upstairs and eat. I'll take my first break of the day when I start up the cast. So I hope that was informative for you guys. We'll be back next week. Once again, if you want to see what's on the itinerary, we have this link right here, and we will be back soon. I'm just gonna kill my cast and come right back on. So thank you all for joining me today for Cooking with Frag. Be back soon.